Hello, YouTube family. Well, one thing I wanted to talk about today, I'm driving to a friend's house right now, and it's going to be like about 20 something minutes or something, 25 minutes. I thought this would be a good time to talk about some of my future plans. I'm planning on being a nomad. And I've in fact bought a decommissioned 10-foot U-Haul, what they call a Morgan Mini Mover, on a GMC Savannah chassis. And I'm just starting the process of converting it to be an RV, with the idea of actually getting the title switched over to be an RV title. And of course it's not ready, not even close to being ready to hit the road. So the plan is in 2027, me heading out to the RTR, the big tent, all that, and starting my nomad career in 27. And so 26 will be the year that I whip that box van into shape to be my little home, my home on wheels. And I've had so many, I've vacillated for so long over whether I do this or not, and what rig to get. And basically I'd end up with rig creep because I was thinking, well, maybe I could do it from this car. No, not really. I'm 6'1". The Matrix is a very small car. It's a nice car to drive, but it would be pretty hideous to try to live out of. I mean, you could sleep in it, I guess. I'd have to have a storage compartment on the roof, maybe a roof tent. Those are a big hassle. And so I thought, well, maybe get a minivan instead. But if I'm going to get a minivan, I'm going to sell this car and get a minivan, then why not just get a full-size van? And then, but you know, I really want to be able to stand up. So if I got a full-size van, I'd have to get a high top for it if I wanted to stand up in it. Because I hear about these people, they're out there in the national forest or in the deserts, and it rains for a week straight, and they're trapped in their vehicle. I didn't want to be folded over for a week. I want to be able to stand up. I like standing up, throwing my stick around, my baton. It's the thing I do. And I don't want to be trapped, forced to sit down all that time. I like to stand up, move around, kind of pace. So if I got a high top for a full-size van, that would cost, to get one put on, it's like $4,000. That was old prices. It's probably like $5-6 now. So then why not just get a Ford Transit, Sprinter, ProMaster? Well, because there's just so much more money. And so I looked into these U-Hauls, the Morgan Mini Mover, the 10-footer. For the longest time I saw that and I thought, no, that's like what, 5.5 feet? If it was 5.5 feet, that's just not high enough for me. If I'm gonna get something, if I'm gonna buy something like that, I want something I can actually stand up in. But I later found out that it is actually about 6'3" inside. So me, even in my Crocs, standing up in there is still like a inch clearance above my head. So it's not bad. I mean, having a foot more would be ideal, but speaking of rig creep, U-Haul sells these 14 footers that are much more spacious, 8 feet wide on the inside, 7 feet high in the ceiling, and like I say, 14 feet long. But they're not cutaways, so it's harder to make a portal into the cabs. It can be done, but it's more difficult. It's built on the Ford Triton engine, which is a V10, and they get like 8 miles to the gallon, something like that. They're gas hogs. Whereas the Mini Mover apparently gets around 15, which is lower than this car, but it's respectable. It's a smaller engine. Another thing is the Ford is a dually, so more tires on the road, well, which is safer, but less gas mileage because there's more friction. Whereas the Mini Mover is it's just 4 wheels, 4 tires. So I'm getting it. You can only buy it as a commercial vehicle, so I had to pay commercial registration, and it's going to be a project for me to convert it over to be an RV. Apparently, there's a bunch of things you have to have done. For one thing, there's got to be a bed, there's got to be a bathroom, there's got to be a sink with running water. There has to be a plumbing system. I don't think it needs to actually have a gray tank. You could have like a tank underneath the counter, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to have it go into a jug. Maybe someday, maybe I'll put a gray water tank on it. But I just want to get it converted. It's got to have a pass through to the cab. I've already cut through that. And there's a few another thing. Oh, it has to have a kitchen facility, so a stove. So that's something I'm going to have to get. Probably I'm going to get an induction stove top. Oh, it has to have its own electrical system. So that's something. Come here around Christmas time when there's a Amazon sale. I think I'm going to look up. I need to research panels and get the panel. I want to cover the roof with panels as much as possible, although I would like a max air fan on there as well. So essentially we're looking at 6.5 feet by 8 feet. If I could cover that with panels, that would be ideal. If I could get 1,000 watts, that would be great. There's another guy I follow on YouTube, Randy, I believe his name is. He's the one who really inspired me. Another guy also has one that he inspired me as well. But this Randy guy, he's really skilled at building. He's kind of intimidating to watch, actually. His build videos are very intimidating because there's no way I'm not gonna be building it like that. Much more professional looking, much better, nicer. He totally decked it out. New bumpers in the front, winch, new headlights, this nice door on the side of the rig with a footwell step. I'm not going to do that. That's actually an issue I have right now. It's something holding me back, is the door on the side, because I want a door on the side, because I was convinced that this Randy's setup is the best, to have a bed in the back. I'll put a twin size bed back there. I am a little tall for a twin, but I believe I'll be able to fit in there, sleeping east-west rather than parallel, northwest, north-south, in the direction of travel, because it's just more efficient. And then I would like to have a garage underneath the bed with barn doors to the outside, so I can put a spare tire. I'm going to have to buy a spare tire. They don't come with one. I will also want a wall with a window above the garage next to the bed, but I also want the wall to come up and out so I can open it up for a Instagram moment. If I'm ever in Baja or whatever, beach or lake or whatever, some beautiful campsite, I would like to do that if there's no mosquitoes or whatever. So I need another point of egress. And so the passenger side behind the passenger seat would be the place for the door. This is where Randy put his door, but he has a footwell. Well, the problem is you really can't put a 6-foot door there. Most of the doors they sell online are 6 feet tall, and I'd be cutting away all this wood from the box. It might lower its structural qualities. So my husband and I were thinking about, we'd cut it to be 5'6", make the door 5'6", so there's more structure to the box. The box would remain more rigid, and I'll have to watch my head when I go in and out of there. But that's adequate. I can probably make do with that. But the problem is they don't sell 5'6" doors here. They do sell them over in China, like Alibaba. They have these doors. They have different size doors that would fit, but to buy it from them, it would cost probably like $700-800, and then I'm concerned with, is it going to work out? Is they going to sell me shit? You know, if there's easy returns, then I pay $400 to get it shipped, because it's going to cost like $400 to get it shipped here. So it occurred to me, maybe I can build the door. I can do the cutout, and then I'll have to create a door jamb and make it so it's weatherproof and windproof and secure. Have security. I think it's doable, but it is concerning. So this has been kind of holding me back, this door thing. Anyway, off all that nuts and bolts concerns about my rig, I'd like to briefly talk about, if you're still here, briefly talk about how this whole van dwelling thing, this whole idea came about. When I was 12 years old, I remember walking in this bowling alley's parking lot one morning, and there was this guy sitting in an RV at his dinette with a newspaper, a cup of coffee, and a cigarette. And I just thought, man, this guy has a house with him. He wherever he goes, there he is. You know, he could kick back, he could sleep, he could park it anywhere and live there. Now you can't actually do that, but that's what I thought back then. And I remember it just seemed like freedom to me. It felt like freedom. Like, this guy has freedom. And I often thought of that as an adult. I remember going to RV shows and looking at RVs and dreaming, even though I didn't have any money, didn't feel like I was ever going to have any money, but I just sort of dreamt. And I went to an RV show up there at the Rose Bowl. I think I went to one in Anaheim. I just like looking at the RVs, dreaming of freedom. But enter 2010, and my mom dies, and I'm living with my mom, And I know that I won't be able to live in that house that much longer, that I will be forced to find another place to live. And I didn't make much money. And this is Los Angeles, Orange County. I was in Orange County at the time, but so I remember doing a Google search saying how to live rent-free. And one list I found, it listed, one thing was like be a caretaker. And then I think another one was be like a professional house sitter, but you still would need a home base to be a house sitter. And then the third thing was living in your vehicle. And I found Bob Wells' Cheap RV Living forum, and I joined that, and I made a few posts, asked a few questions. I remember asking, because I was thinking, you know, I might actually be able to like grow as a person by moving into a van. And I remember asking a question like, van dwelling as personal development, and that was I think that was the title there. And I remember Bob answered, he said, yeah, absolutely, because he grew a whole lot after, you know, living in his vehicle and traveling around and meeting challenges. And one challenge I don't think he mentioned in that thread was the challenge of entertaining yourself, keeping yourself entertained if you're alone. A lot of people are terrified of being alone, and I've been terrified too. I'm mostly a loner, but I usually like connect with one person and I orbit them. It's just been like a survival strategy. So anyway, living in a vehicle. Well, that I started really looking into that. I started researching it. But then I ended up moving in with my then boyfriend, now husband. And so I've been living with him. And I pay my own way. I pay my fair share. But this thing keeps calling me. We don't have the greatest relationship. We don't have it's not an acrimonious relationship. We're friendly to each other, but we can tell we're not like soulmates or anything like that. We're not, thankfully, we're not twin flames either, but anyway, it's just time. It's time to move on. I need to see what this will do with my life. And like I say, I still have lots of concerns, lots of fears. But ultimately, as much as during my spiritual search, I wanted to look at fear and take it apart, like deconstruct it, so I didn't have to face it. And in many ways that did sort of work. In many ways it did. But ultimately, no, I still have to taste this, experiencing it, going through it. There's this part of me, the doubter I call it, that doubts whether I can do this. But it's not like a negative. It's not a negative Nelly. It's not saying, oh yeah, you can't do that. It's just saying, prove it. Prove it. You think you can do this? Prove it. I'm seeing is believing. I'll believe it once I see it. That's what it was telling me all these years during the search for enlightenment. It was like, all those years, it was like, oh, really? Is this it? And I'd be like, well, yeah, but I got some spiritual experiences under my belt, right? He's like, well, yeah, but this whole permanent enlightenment thing hasn't happened. The sense of being a visceral sense, separate sense of self is still there, right? Yeah, and it was. Not anymore, though. And that doubter was gobsmacked for like 6 months. It was like so amazed. It was like jaw open for that whole 6 months, metaphorically speaking. And so, and it wasn't like, now I'm pissed off because you proved me wrong, because it never was. It was like my inner scientist. It needs to actually see it. It needs to taste it. It needs to know it's real. It has to, it's the organ in this mind that separates fantasy from reality, fancy from what's actually going on. And there's all this procrastination happening here. And briefly, I want to mention one thing, that throughout my whole spiritual search and everything, I made the deal with my nervous system. I at the time, I used to call it, I made a deal with myself. But now I think it's more accurate to say I made a deal with my nervous system that I will entertain and do any crazy new thing if you sign off on it, my nervous system. And if my nervous system says no, I won't do it, because I'm not going to betray myself anymore. Because I know, because I tried that. I've tried that numerous times. But for this 19 years or 20 years now, I respect that. And if that means that I die having never accomplished the goal that I'm looking for, so be it. I'm going to respect this part of me. I'm never going to turn my back on it. I'm never going to abandon it ever again. And so, is that like holding me back? Well, it's certainly slowing things down from the appearance of the outside observer. But fuck them. The peanut gallery, if I were to be judged by the peanut gallery, I'd already be lost. I'd be, toast. So anyway, I'm pulling into my friend's neighborhood. So I will talk to you next time.